where is your industry going? Because you need to also be going that direction. In fact, you need to get there before the industry gets there. Since COVID, the rate at which salons have been shutting down is actually crazy. It's about 8% year on year. So what's the next big problem? For me, that's tech in the hair space. The trend with business is a niche within a niche. We know that starting in black hair is great. You can go deep and build real value for that community and then expand. If I look at areas of my life where I have been able and open to constructive feedback are areas of my life that I care about. I care that they have a product that works, and I care about that more than I care about being successful. You have to be a bit unapologetic, and sometimes as an entrepreneur, when you have a vision for the future and how you want the final product to look, you get caught up in like, it needs to be exactly the way I envision it, but you need to test the highest value feature. There was something in my mind that was like, you need to ride this momentum, because if it dies, it's hard to get it back, and you will trade off another year of working for your dream. Is that worth it?
You're not defined by where you come from.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big message that I always want to tell people.
Like you have to be able to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like be comfortable with being uncomfortable.
When you grow up in ends, you don't realise it when you're confident, but you have an audacity to do things that ordinarily most people wouldn't be willing to do.
All right, welcome back to the Takeoff Experience. We've got a special guest in the building. Antoinette, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am good. Very, very excited about this episode. Very excited to hear about your journey, and I'm sure that the audience is as well. I actually wanted to start it like this. How has the new year started for you so far?
Oh, that's a good question. The new year's been good. I think I actually didn't do a lot of my planning in December, which I usually do. So I usually do my personal planning, business planning in December, but I was actually really exhausted from the year in December. So I've actually taken January instead of hitting the ground running. It's been a bit reflective. It's been a bit, more planning wise than I would usually do.
Yeah.
But it's been good. It's been good. Back in the gym, which feels good.
Nice.
But it's been a good start to the year.
Yeah. What made it so busy last year? What happened?
Well, last year I launched Tressly.
Okay.
And we'll talk more about that later.
Yeah.
But, it was an accumulation of like so much work from my previous business, transitioning over, creating a hype, creating a community around it. We had our first ever event, which was our launch event. It was a gala for hairstylists in the UK. And so it was a lot of effort.
Yeah.
And also I think a lot of emotional exhaustion as well. The ups and downs of like, oh my God, is this going to go well? Blah, 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 blah. It all ended up being amazing, but it was just, I just realized at the end, I was like, I'm tired. So that's why.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So you're feeling actually burnt out.
Oh, I was feeling it. Yeah.
Oh my God. And you know what? It's good because some people, I feel like sometimes with entrepreneurship, there's a bit of a mindset where it's like, just push through it. And then mentally, you got to just stop yourself from doing anything further. You would just be like, I'm done.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. And I think luckily I've never really been a push through it person. I think I recognize rest as a very important part of my journey.
That's important.
Which is important, yeah. And I think also knowing when is the time to rest. And so like, I think it was like November. It was like one of my close friends, her birthday was around the end of November. And I just remember saying like, I don't even have the energy to like, get up and go. Like I actually just need to chill. Wow. And that's when I realized I was like, you know what? December is just recuperation. I need to just regain back, so take it easy. I mean, still working, but not at the rate. Yeah. I think it's the rate. You have to kind of slow down a bit, right? Yeah. So
It's super, super important. So, okay. So for those, this is the first time they're going to meet you. So I guess who is Antoinette?
So I am a self-professed beauty lover. Okay. I'm the founder of Tressly, which is a website builder and a booking software for independent hairstylists. I've been in the black hair space for about 7 to 8 years now.
Wow.
I started off with a passion for hair. So my actual professional background is in finance and marketing, but I've always done hair on the side. Okay. And so that's kind of where my love for hair started. My aunt had a salon, so I was always around that. Okay. And that's when I kind of thought, you know what, this is an area I want to get into. So aside from doing hair on the side, I set up my first business, Hair Crush, which was a community of black women that wanted to share content around afro hair care. And so we worked with brands like like Dyson and Cantu and Pantene. We worked on loads of amazing campaigns. And I realized, you know what, the next phase of my journey is supporting hairstylists. And so I launched my company Tressly last year and going full time with it this year.
Okay, wow. That's amazing. We're definitely going to get into that. It's always, the way we start the podcast, we always love to like get to know the background of the person that is, you know, featuring on the podcast. So, you know, I guess where are your parents from?
So my mum's Ghanaian, my dad's Nigerian.
Yep. And were you born in Ghana or Nigeria or the UK?
So I was born in the UK, but I went to Ghana when I was about 3.
Okay.
And so my whole childhood was in Ghana.
Really?
So I lived in Ghana from about 3 to 12.
Seriously?
Yeah,
oh,
but
wow.
the whole of primary school, basically.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was like your earliest memories of like being in Ghana at the time?
So I just remember like we had a massive garden, and I just remember like running around and really elaborate birthday parties.
Oh,
I know
really?
that's so random, but I remember like we used to have these massive birthday parties.
Yeah.
Me and my sister, have a sister who's a year below me, and massive bouncy castles, friends from school, everyone from school. And I just remember thinking, wow, like this is so fun. And those are I had that all the way up until I was 12.
Really?
So all the way up until I left Ghana.
Wow.
So it's a beautiful, memories. It's a beautiful memory for me because it's now made birthdays really important to me, which is really interesting.
Do you know, what did you feel like, I guess, growing up in Ghana at the time?
It was amazing because I think as a child, you know, I think the quality of life is very different in that part of the world when you do have a little bit of, well, you're from a decent background, right? When I say decent, I mean like you have a bit of money. And so things like having a driver, having people to help with the home.
Hey.
When I came to London, it was a bit of a shock. I was like, I have to do this
They have the
myself.
helpers anymore,
Yeah, so it was for me. It was actually great. Like I was living life. I was enjoying. But I think also like I went to international school, So I met
in Ghana.
In Ghana.
Okay.
So I actually met a lot of people from different backgrounds. So some of my friends were from Lebanon, Algeria, like all across the world. And so it was actually really nice. You know, I had my culture, but I also I got exposed to a lot of other cultures as well.
Mad. What? So how comes I had a great life? What happened? Why London? Do you know why your parents decided to move to London?
Yeah, I think the plan was always that me and my sister would come to London. I think it was just a matter of timing.
Okay.
And I think they probably didn't want to break up our primary school education. They probably thought, let's complete it and then start a new chapter, which is obviously kind of a year 7 onwards.
Yeah.
And I really appreciated that because it felt like if I had to leave in between, that's never good for children. You know, you never want to leave your friends.
That's true.
You know, but at the end of year 6, everyone was going their separate ways. Some people were going abroad, some people were staying. So it felt like a good time to transition over to like a new life.
Okay. Yeah. And how did you adjust when you moved to London? You talked about one of the adjustments, which was, you know, not being used to having drivers and butlers and things like that. Yeah.
But I think it was interesting because I think at school I was like I feel like I was at a different level in Ghana. So when I came, I don't know what it is, but I think I was kind of like, wow, like I'd learnt this already, you know? So I was probably like 2 grades ahead.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's
so
nice.
It was very much like, you know, kind of like boredom, kind of just feeling like, you know, not challenged for like the first couple of years. And then I kind of settled in.
Okay.
I think in terms of people, I'm quite a people person. So I kind of like, I made friends quite easily. I think it was just adjusting to the school system and like, oh, why am I learning this again? Like, done this. I know this like maths, whatever.
Mad.
So it was interesting, but it was nice to have that edge. But it quickly wore off. When I got to year 9, I was like, okay, now we're learning new stuff.
That's what always happens. You get to a certain part and then it just comes crashing down.
Right? Yeah.
That's mad. What was like, so were you like proper into the education or were you more on the creative side, more on like the entrepreneurship side, even at like secondary school?
That's a really good point. I was very much into like my education. I think I had dreams of being like a pediatrician. So I wanted to get into medicine. So I was very kind of like, this is what I want to do. Like, I mean, that changed completely when I got a bit older. But when I was young, I remember I would really kind of like look up to the kind of career like the careers that you typically see, like a, you know, a lawyer, a doctor, and maybe that's like the symptom of being an African household, you know. So kind of that was those were some of my aspirations at the time. But I think I was always creative. Like I always had creative outlets. So I used to paint a lot when I was younger.
Okay, wow.
We always did hair. Like I always had like loads of dolls, so I would play around with stuff like that.
Okay.
But yeah, I would always explore creative outlets, but always as a way of more of a release, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So then what happened? Why did you decide to go down, you know, becoming a doctor, down the medical route?
I think I got to a certain level and I realized actually I'm great with numbers.
Okay.
And I think I wasn't that great with the science.
Okay.
So I was kind of so actually like my mum was like, why didn't you study maths in for your A levels and like economics?
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what, why not? Like when something comes easy to you, you kind of feel like I might as well.
You might as well just do that.
Yeah. So I kind of like, you know, I studied maths and economics, did it for A levels alongside politics, and I think I can't remember the last subject. But it was great because I think at the end of that I was like, okay, right, I know I can do this quite easily. I can study economics and then maybe go into, you know, some sort of finance role. But one thing I realized is that even though I was good at it, I didn't find it that interesting.
Okay, you didn't like it at all.
It wasn't my thing, but I kind of just went with it.
Okay.
And so I think earlier on in my career I realized that, and I was like, you can either go down this route
of boredom and
or you can like pivot now and use your skills right in a different way.
That's good. That I feel like what I'm hearing from you so far is that you're kind of continuously following the path that you think that you're on. You don't really spend too much time doing stuff that you don't really like, which I think a lot of us do. A lot of us do that. So how did you I guess I got a question around that. Like, how did you come to terms with that, and how did you make that decision to be like, you know what, you started off in the finance career, I want to like pivot into something else?
I think I'm quite an impatient person.
Okay.
which is not great. Like I think it has its pros and cons, right?
Yeah.
I think the pros is that when something doesn't work for me, I'm very, very quick to change because I'm almost like, why is this not working? Like I need to make something change so that it does work for me, or I just need to completely change from what I'm doing. Sometimes that's bad because sometimes you probably need to stick things out a bit more. And so I've learned that actually through business. I think when I actually I think being an entrepreneur has taught me patience for sure. But I think in my earlier kind of years I was very impatient. So if I was in a job and I felt like I wasn't being challenged anymore, it wasn't serving me, I was like, okay, right, what's the next opportunity? What I was always like looking for something else. And so I didn't like that feeling of not being either challenged or stimulated or happy. And so I would always be quick to make that change. What I've learned now is that you have to really evaluate your reasons why. And sometimes you actually have to stick it out to learn and become better from it rather than run away from it.
I agree.
So you have to kind of discern what the right like, you know, which it is basically.
That's crazy. So obviously when you came out of uni, you said that you got into finance, right? Into a finance role. What company was it, and what were you doing at the time when you? So
it was St James's Place Wealth Management. And I was working for one of the senior partners as a client services and marketing manager. So actually it was actually a marketing client services role, but there was actually a lot of finance involved. Because I had to actually do a lot of reporting for the clients. And that involved understanding like the index funds, the numbers. So actually it was
that's a lot of,
it was client services, but it was very much like you required a finance degree because you had to understand what you were saying and obviously make sure that it was right and it was accurate. So that's kind of where I was. I actually did an internship there and I enjoyed it. And then they offered me a role when I graduated. So that's how it happened.
And then you ended up leaving, right? To go to another company.
Exactly. So after a year, I left. I realized, you know what? I do like the marketing side, but the finance side of this role is too much, right? I don't want this.
Too much numbers.
Too much, So I moved over to Publicis Group, which is a media agency. And I was working there on some of that, their healthcare accounts as an account exec, really enjoying it, like doing the marketing. I did loads of events. And I think it was there I discovered my love for events and bringing people together.
So that's where it came from.
That's where it came from. And I learned a lot of the skills of like how to execute on an event from that role. It
Okay.
was really, really structured, really like obviously massive agency. So I really got to kind of like understand, okay, this is what you need. Like these are the detail. And I became very detail orientated in that role. I remember I had a line manager. I was like, she used to be like, well, that P is out of place. She was so particular. And I used to think, this is so annoying.
Yeah.
But I honestly think it shaped a lot of the way I work now. You know, I think I'm very much like a visionary, big thinker, but it forced me to be like, ooh, look at the tiny detail. She'd always be like, I'd be like, this is not important. She'd be like, it is important. And so I had a long period of going through that with her.
Yeah.
But by the end of it, it really did help me, to be honest. It really did.
Although I understand what you're saying, there's definitely got to be a balance as well. Because some people, you're spending like 10 hours on a PowerPoint and you've not even added much more value, but it's just the colouring and stuff like
it's
that.
like, come on, please.
Come on. Yeah, that's crazy. Well, it sounds like it was such a rewarding experience. And then I guess what was like the urge to be like, you know what, I'm really enjoying, you know, my career here. I want to like start a business on the side. How did that happen?
Yeah, so actually it started off, the inception was at university. So I went to Leicester University, and at the time I realized that there wasn't much going on in terms of afro textured hair in the Midlands, because obviously it's a predominantly white area. You have tons of students coming over from London and they don't have anywhere to do their hair.
Okay.
So a couple of people found out through the grapevine that I did hair, and actually I just ended up doing hair like quite a bit in uni. But what I realized was that outside of like lectures and stuff, people would always ask me questions about hair and be like, oh, how do I do this? Or what product should I use for this? And I think at the time there wasn't much in the media around afro hair care.
Okay.
It was kind of like the beginning of the natural hair movement.
Yeah.
There wasn't much information. And so I kind of felt like, what if I create a platform that shares content around this, healthy hair content, tips, creates a bit of a community. I'll start off as an Instagram page and see how it goes. And so that's where Hair Crush was born.
Okay.
That was it. And so started the Instagram page, you know, got a huge following, started a monthly newsletter, sharing tips, started working with brands, brands reaching out saying, can we work together? You know, and I was like, wait, hold on. There's something here, you know, there's something building. There was momentum building. And so we actually started working with brands to reach communities. So brands that were looking to enter the black hair space, for example, Dyson, a few years later, they were actually looking to create an afro hair attachment for their supersonic hairdryer. And so we worked with them on the go-to-market campaign of like, okay, how do you then reach this demographic? What influencers do you work with? And that was amazing.
Yeah.
You know, that was our first like big break. We're like, hold on, this is cool. And then we ended up working with loads of other brands. Living Proof, they created a curl range, kind of helped them with the strategy for that. All the while educating our community, working with influencers.
That's really cool, yeah.
Pantene, their Gold Series range for afro hair, we helped them, supported them with that. So it was just an incredible time. Like it was kind of like, I think it was the buzz of like, hold on, this is when, I don't know if you saw, there was a period of time, probably about 2-3 years ago, when everyone's saying the black hair industry is worth billions, why is no one serving this industry? You know, so brands were really trying to get in there. And, you know, we were perfectly placed because we'd been in the industry for a while at that point, as like a solid community and platform. And I think my marketing background helped, because essentially what I ended up doing is essentially consulting and running a bit of an agency. Alongside our community work. So it was great. Yeah.
Wow. That's incredible. I always think like brands is so interesting, because it's crazy is when you say the fact that there was no kind of content around that. It's like, wow, like why was nobody doing this? It's like, come on, light bulb moment.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think there was a lot of American creators on YouTube.
But not here.
Not here. And so it was really like penetrating this market and saying like, why are we listening to girls about products we can't actually buy? We couldn't even buy the products, you know? So, and then obviously I think, you know, what I love about Hair Crush is that when we started, there wasn't much, but I think now, and this was about 6.5 years ago that I started Hair Crush.
Okay.
Yeah. And so a long time ago. And I think in that time, it's been amazing to see how the space has grown. And I've been a part of it. I've seen new platforms pop up. I've collaborated with loads of people. And I'm at the point with Hair Crush, I'm like, it's, when you have a business, you always think, what is this business for?
Yeah.
What is it setting out to do? And at the time, Hair Crush was setting up to bridge the gap in the British beauty media around afro hair care.
Yeah.
And I think 6 years later, I'm like, wow, the gap has been bridged.
Yeah.
Like there is so much out there now.
So much out there. Yeah.
And it's amazing. I kind of feel like it's, not the end of an era, but it's like, wow, we did some amazing stuff, right? And what's the next big problem?
Yeah.
And for me, that's tech. In the hair space.
Okay.
So thinking about how can tech serve
Yeah.
the black hair space in an amazing way. And that's what Tressly is about, supporting hairstylists.
So is that how that idea came about? As you was like, okay, cool. Actually, no, I want you to tell the story. How did that come? How did that come about?
Yeah, so pretty much you hit the nail on the head. I think having that much experience in the space with Hair Crush and being so immersed in like hair and stylists, and I had like a very close view of like what was missing.
Yeah.
I started to hear from stylists that they were struggling with software. There was a big kind of like tech gap. So I think it was kind of like struggling to use current software, but also current software not serving them because it's quite generic.
Yeah.
They were using scheduling softwares that doctors use. There was no
That
kind
is
of
mad.
there's so I think it was more kind of like, how do we create something that serves you? But outside of that, how do we bring the community element that I built with Hair Crush to that business as well? So more than a software, how do we make it a movement, a community that as a stylist, you come in and you say, hey, I want to 10x my business. I've got a community that can help me. I've got the software. Let's grow kind of thing. Yeah. So that's kind of where Tressly came from.
Okay. Oh, that's so interesting. Are you able to quickly describe what, Tressly... In fact, no, let me rephrase the question because I had it in another way. So I had it in a way where, paraphrasing myself, I'm not a hairstylist, but if I was a well-known hairstylist and I was obviously looking for software to support my business, I guess how would Tressly help me grow, and why should I use Tressly?
So with Tressly, we provide, I always say it like this, we provide the brand, we bridge the brand and the business, right? As a business owner, you have especially, let me say not a business owner, let me say as a hairstylist, you have your business that you need to run, and that's bookings, payments, emailing clients, marketing. So that's the business side. Then you have the brand, which is like your brand identity, your logo, how you present yourself online. And so with Tressly, we bridge the brand and the business. We have the website builder, which allows you to create a beautiful professional website in about 15 minutes.
Yeah, I saw that. That's crazy.
Yeah, using templates that we've created that suit you as a hairstylist. But also the business. You also access back-end tools. So managing your bookings, payments that clients make, email marketing to clients, all in one system. And so we're kind of think about a website builder like Wix. Or Squarespace, and then think about a booking system like Acuity Scheduling or Booksy, and then think about payment solutions like Stripe, PayPal, and then think about mailing like MailChimp, and then put that all in one place. That's Tressly.
Okay, that's crazy. How did you come up with all of that? Because that's a lot to come up with. Yeah. And how long did that take you to come up with like all of those kind of components?
I think it was actually experience as well.
Okay,
remember,
so
I did hair.
Yeah.
So I was using Acuity.
Oh, what, yourself?
Yeah, myself.
Wait, so you were still a hairstylist even post uni?
Yeah, I was doing it on the side.
Okay.
Yeah, but even though I was doing it on the side, because of my diary, I needed to have something that I could at least schedule in, like friends and family.
Yeah, like maybe weekends and
maybe weekends and stuff like that. And so I was using Acuity, and I realized that it was great. Acuity is great for booking. That's what it does really well, but it doesn't do anything else. It doesn't help you build a it's a one-trick pony. It doesn't help you build a brand. It doesn't help you with the visual sides of your business. And there was other elements I felt like I was missing. I wanted like a stronger, like kind of, I was using different apps for different things, and I was like, I feel like it should just all be in one, right? And so that's where I conducted like research. I did some in-depth research with hundreds of stylists, and I wanted to find out like, what is it that you're missing, right? And I think the main thing that they said is like the brand side of things. Like I can't showcase my logo, my colors, like, and I think especially in a crowded industry, an industry that continues to be crowded, you need to differentiate yourself and stand out. And so that was something that they were missing. And so I felt like, why don't we fill that gap? essentially. Why don't we bring this all together?
That's interesting.
Yeah. And so I met my co-founder, actually Sam, my co-founder, I met him at uni. But when I was building the business, I couldn't think of anyone better.
Okay.
You know, he'd worked for so many amazing companies. He's a product engineer. And I just felt like, I was like, yeah, let me speak to Sam about this. Let me see what he thinks.
What did you do to convince him?
I think what he liked was that I had already done the research.
Okay, that's
actually,
very important.
Yeah, which is very important. And actually, when we spoke about it, I'd actually already built an MVP. So an MVP is obviously a minimal viable product. It was essentially like testing out this model.
Had you? Oh, that's
so during COVID, actually.
What, by yourself or did
by
you?
myself.
Whoa.
Well, I got a developer to support. But it was very patchy. Like it was genuinely like the lowest possible
But that's good though.
Very scrappy.
Yeah.
So I had pieced together all the things that I needed, different bits of software. Like it was so scrappy, but I just wanted to see if people would pay for it.
Yeah.
And if I could and stylists were using it and paying for it because
They were using your MVP.
They were using the MVP.
Wow, brave. You're brave
And
for actually putting it out there. A lot of people wouldn't.
Yeah.
And that's great that you put it out there.
And I think that's the thing about business. Like you have to be a bit unapologetic because I was very embarrassed of it. Like I was like, this is not the product I envision. And sometimes as an entrepreneur, when you have a vision for the future and how you want the final product to look, you get caught up in like, it needs to be exactly the way I envision it. But you need to test the highest value feature. Like whatever you're trying to sell. For us, it was the website builder component. We knew that stylists didn't have the time or capacity to be building these elaborate websites for themselves, but they wanted websites. But they also wanted websites that worked and took bookings and had the functionality of advanced booking systems. So essentially the MVP was a website builder mashed with an existing booking software, masked as an app.
Okay.
So very scrappy.
Yeah.
But we tested that and we realized that they were willing to pay for those features together. And we added in there some sort of mailing. It was very scrappy. But again, it just allowed us to test, actually, if you had all of these things in one app, is that valuable to you? And it was.
Yeah.
And so I feel like if I didn't do that, it wouldn't have been validation enough for me to even speak to Sam.
Yeah.
Because how does he know that I'm not just imagining that this is an issue and people would actually pay for this?
How many people were paying for it at the time?
So at the time we had 10, which was
That's
actually
good.
Yeah, which was actually the capacity. Like we couldn't actually go more than that. But it was still amazing. You know, it was buggy, it was bad.
Yeah.
But the fact that they trusted me enough to put their business in my hands and it was scrappy and they still stayed on it for about 6 months.
Did they?
Yeah, whilst we learned, and I learned a lot from them. I took notes and I was like, we're gonna come back, trust me. Thank you for being patient. Thank you for the feedback. I'm gonna let you go because I know this has been a hard process. But they were there. Yeah.
I think you know what's so crazy about what you are doing is the fact that a lot of people have mad ego when they're producing a product and they're not willing to get any feedback for it, but you were very willing to be like, look, this is not where I want it to be, but I just want to hear everything so I can make it the best, you know. 100%. And I feel that's why you've gotten to where you got to, and you were able to recruit him. And I don't want to ruin the next part, but you're, you know, going on to do more stuff. I think because you're doing it the right way. A lot of people don't want to, you know,
don't want to listen.
Yeah,
because you know what it is. It's hard to listen. It's hard to receive criticism. Criticism is a hard word to say. It's hard to receive constructive feedback. I think, as you said, it's ego. Like you kind of want to hope that it works. It's not hope. Like if your user tells you like this isn't working for me, how do I fix it? Like for me, I want to be so close to the customers, like so close to my users. So I'm like, guys, if anything is not working or you want things to be better, I need to know. And I think it's just having that like open dialogue, because when they see that you're willing and then when they tell you something, you change it, they're like, oh, she actually is creating this for me. She doesn't care about, it's not about her. It's about like how I see the product and how I use it. So I think it's really been really helpful. And I think Sam saw that as well, which was, you know, great.
Were you always like that from the start?
I think
like that receptive?
I think that's a good question. I think
I'm just trying to understand, because if you wasn't, it's nice to hear how you got there, because I think that would be so helpful for people, not only just in business, in anything in life, for you to get from point A to point Z in improvement.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think if I look at areas of my life
Yeah.
where I have been able and open to constructive feedback, are areas of my life that I care about. So because I actually care about the experience that hairstylists have. I care that they have a product that works.
Yeah.
And I care about that more than I care about creating the product. I care about that more than I care about being successful. I actually care that it creates value for them. It actually warms my heart that they tell me like, I need this. And I'm like, yep, we'll do it. Or this is not working. Yep, we'll fix it. Because I care about the experience they have. I think where you don't really care about stuff is hard to have, or your priorities are in different areas. If I was creating this product for money, maybe I wouldn't care as much. Like about their experiences. I would just be like, oh, we're just trying to onboard as many users as possible. Let's go, scale at all costs, that kind of startup mentality. But I genuinely care. And I think, that's been the kind of the thing that's helped me. And I think if I look at areas of my life that maybe I don't care as much about, that's where ego comes in. Because then you're like, well, thank you for the feedback, but I'm good, but it's like when you actually do care, you're like, no, thank you for the feedback. I'm gonna make a difference. I'm gonna change because I'm very passionate about that.
That's a fantastic insight. That is fantastic, and I've not heard that before. That's brilliant.
And that's just, I think that's how I feel. I don't know if it applies for everyone, but that I see that difference in myself. When I care more about something, I'm more open to feedback.
Yeah, and I think it makes sense, right? Because if you truly care about something, you'd want it to be the best it can be, right? I think that's a gem. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah,
and think about it, even in relationships, right? You really care about someone. They tell you that, hey, that was really selfish what you did. You're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry, because you care about that person. Someone, maybe a colleague, tells you that, you probably be like, oh, great. Yeah. Your sister or your spouse tells you that. You're like, how did I do that? Can I be better? I don't know. I think it's just when you care more, you're more open to doing better.
I love that insight. I absolutely love that insight. So in terms of like making money, I saw it's like it's type of like a membership thing, right?
Yeah, so it's monthly subscription.
I guess, would you classify yourself as like a SaaS?
Yeah.
Yes, like a SaaS
B2B
company, right?
SaaS company, yeah.
B2B SaaS company. And currently you have like two packages. I think I saw $9.99 to $29.99. The $29.99 is like, it's like premium, right? So it's a premium package and it's access to TV and film opportunities. Is that like, so your clients would then have opportunities in TV and film, anything that comes up, like on the other side of the business? Yeah,
so what we have, so essentially we were on an accelerator last year with Sky. And and it was really interesting because it was great just meeting people, but actually we ended up having conversations about the representation in film and TV for Afro hairstylists. And Sky actually made a pledge last year that, any time that they have a, Black member of cast in a production, they will make sure that there is an Afro hair stylist on set. And that's a big commitment because that's, no other broadcaster has made that kind of commitment before. And it was in light of all these horror stories, and I don't know if you've seen any of them, of Black cast members just having horrific experience with hair and makeup on set. You've seen it in, like, London Fashion Week shows, you see it on set. There's all these stories, and it's because, hair and makeup staff are hired, but actually they're not hired by specialism. They're hired to do everyone. But then if you have Black members of Black cast members on set, they're not able to do their hair. They're not able to do their makeup in the way that they should. So people actually end up doing their own makeup, doing their own hair.
They end up doing it themselves.
Yeah, imagine you're an actor and you're like, you know what? You go into the bathroom, you're like, no,
comb your own hair,
I need to sort this out. Yeah, so they actually released a documentary whilst they made that pledge. And that documentary was shedding light on all those issues. And they said, in light of this, we are making this commitment. Yeah. It just so happened that at the same time, we were on the cohort.
That's so cool.
Of businesses that they supported in this accelerator. And so they said, hey, you've got loads of stylists that can do Afro hair. Why don't we look at, some sort of way to kind of create opportunities for them. And so it's interesting because actually film and TV requires like an additional, I guess, not qualification, but you do have to have experience in that field. And so there will be a small percentage of the stylists that we work with or that subscribe to Tressly that would be eligible.
Okay.
And for those that are, we want to make sure that we're providing opportunities there as well.
Okay, wow, that is so cool. So you're making money on one side and the other
And
side.
another side, yeah.
That's cool. That's very smart. And to be fair, it makes sense. And there's so many media clients. It's not even just media. There's just other aspects where I think that you could definitely partner with other businesses.
Yeah.
So are you still doing a hair crush at the moment, or is it just like transitioning to like Tressly?
Yeah, we're in a transition period. Yeah,
okay.
It feels like it's the right time to kind of move over and be full time with Tressly.
Yeah, okay.
So we kind of like last year the team we wound down the team, and this year I think it's pretty much going to be how do we transition to Tressly and focus on that.
Yeah, and I don't know if you've already said on podcast. Actually, no, you did. So you're going full time, right?
Yes.
Soon.
Yeah.
I guess, why did you make that decision?
I think,
Full-time?
yeah, that's a really good point. I think, you know, I'm of faith, so I'm a Christian, and I always pray about things, and I always felt like I prayed about it, and I said, when is the right time to go full time? I will know. I said, God will tell me. And at the end of last year, I just felt it. Like there was something, I think I'd launched, obviously we had the Gala, which I'll talk more about in a bit, but we'd had this massive event. It was amazing. We had L'Oreal sponsor and some big magazines, and it was just kind of, we had momentum. And there was something in my mind that was like, you need to ride this momentum. And because if it dies, it's hard to get it back. And sometimes, you know, companies don't ever get it back,
Yeah.
you know, and you will trade off another year of working for your dream. Is that worth it? You got to ask yourself.
Ask yourself that
You got to ask yourself that question, you know?
Yeah.
So, and my mentor put it really, really bluntly. She said, what's the worst that can happen? If not, you get another job. I said, yeah.
It's facts.
It's facts though. She literally said it as it was. And I think all that fear kind of started to dissipate. And I realized, I was like, she said to me as well that like, this is you've been doing this off the side of working full time. Imagine if you had the time to fully dedicate to it. You would 10x your, you know, your kind of progress.
Yeah.
So that was kind of,
It's not. Look, honestly, you got to make these decisions. At the end of the day, you hear all the stories of all the founders, and they're always having to take risks. Like one of my favorite books, actually, Shoe Dog. I finished it recently. He was working part-time a lot, but at some point he was like, you know what, got to go full-time to grow this business for it to be sustainable. Because what was happening was that he just wasn't able to meet financially, able to meet it, because he couldn't get enough, you know, shoes out the door. So you know, he just had to be in the thick of it. So yeah, sometimes that's what you kind of got to do. So obviously you talked about like the first version of your app. I guess, well, how comes you haven't released the second version yet? What's going on with that?
So currently, we had a waiting list kind of period last year. So had the event in October and had the waiting list open for about a month and a half.
Yeah.
And so right now we're literally closing the waiting list, launching the website and going live. But in the meantime, we have been onboarding stylists from the waiting list onto the app. So
have
web
you?
app. Yeah.
Okay.
So it's working, it's functioning. We're just kind of like, it's not open. You kind of have to be on the waiting list and then be onboarded.
Okay.
But in a few weeks, stylists will be able to book directly through the website and get on the app.
Okay, wow. So I guess at the end of the first year of launching the app, what goal would you wanted to have achieved?
So our goal for this year, that by the end of the year, we want to have 1,000 users on the app.
Okay, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
So that's, you know, I feel energized by that because it's a lot, but we feel like we have a roadmap that will allow us to get there.
And there's way more than 1,000 hairstylists out there.
Yeah, exactly. But we understand that like in the first year, really for us, it's about just proving that there is like what we've built is actually viable in the market. And so part of that is just kind of getting into the right spaces, strategic partnerships, loads of events. Community is such a huge part of our marketing. And so convening, like bringing people together, and also a lot of like learning. So alongside obviously the app, we have Tressly Academy, which is launching soon, which is essentially just like learning materials for stylists. So helping them with things like business, finance,
That's crazy.
just to really upskill them, because essentially they're small business owners.
Yeah.
But they've just kind
That's
of
true.
been thrust into the world of business. Really, they're just creatives, that love doing hair.
Forced to do business.
That are forced to do business, and so like as much support as we can give them around that, we want to do that, and so
Yeah.
that's a huge aim for this year as well.
That's amazing. Wish you good luck with it as well.
Thank you.
So obviously you're talking about like some of the accelerators. So you obviously, did one with Sky, you did one with Barclays, One Tech and Google. I guess, how do you feel like they helped your progress, and what was like the one thing that you took from them?
That's a really good question. I think they all brought different things in terms of value. The Barclays Accelerator, I would say, was great for kind of actual business knowledge.
Yeah.
So I particularly liked like some of the masterclasses they had around finance, because obviously they're a bank. I feel like they placed huge emphasis on that, which was good. And so like just really upskilling the founders on the program around that.
Yeah.
And the network, Barclays has an amazing network. So actually I met a couple of investors on that program at the pitch day, and I met some amazing founders as well. So I think that for me it was like the quality of the masterclasses on the Barclays Accelerator was incredible.
Okay.
For the for the BEO and Sky Accelerator, I think the main thing that was great was the money. So you actually got a grant with that,
Okay.
which was great.
How much?
15K.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, which
That's
really
good,
helped us
yeah.
to kind of get started.
Yeah, especially with like the finishing off the MVP. right?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
That's
At that
good.
time, it was like critical. So
Yeah.
like it was amazing. And then I think also the opportunities, supplier opportunities with Sky. They're a huge company. So even just like as part of the accelerator, they actually said we want to create supplier opportunities with Sky. And so that's where all these conversations came up about, the film and TV. And I think it was amazing because how else would we have even thought or gotten in the door? So
That's crazy.
Yeah.
So obviously we were talking offline as well that you're looking, the next step is potential investment, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. How I guess, why did you decide, okay, I'm not gonna bootstrap, let's go and get a bit of investment?
Bootstrapping is hard.
Yeah.
Bootstrapping is
Very
hard.
tough.
Very tough. And I think you have to think about what kind of business you have as well. I think because we're a tech business, I think even though we have a co-founder, so my co-founder is a CTO, he's very much like product led. To get to where we need to get to the next phase, we definitely need like an injection of cash. And what we have decided is that, you know what, let's do it now rather than like wait till we really, really need it. Because right now we need it, but like, instead of waiting later on till we really, really need it, let's start to have conversations. Let's start to have conversations now, and also look at strategic investors that have experience in the space that can actually help us outside of that, because that's invaluable. You can't put a price on that, really. So that's kind of why we decided.
And how much are you looking to raise, would you say, like roughly? What's the...
So we're looking to raise 200K.
Okay, 200K. And I guess how long is that going to last you? Because
So
tech
about-
is expensive.
It's expensive. And I think we, because, me and my co-founder, so I will be full-time, but my co-founder might not be full-time. So I think it should last us about 18 months, depending on how we spend it.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good use.
It should.
Okay.
And I think we know what we need to do. And bearing in mind, we will actually be generating revenue as well, because we have paying customers.
Oh, yes.
So
of
that
course.
does
Yes.
help.
Yes.
So it's not
And it's like
completely-
recurring as
it's
well.
recurring
right?
as well.
That's amazing. model, yeah.
Recurring revenue is great.
Everybody's trying to get that,
Recurring revenue
Everybody's
is
trying to get the
great, like,
recurring money.
It's just a bit of
Everybody,
a...
even businesses that don't make sense, they're trying to
they're
get
trying
it.
to get some
like
sort of-
coffee.
Yeah.
Even though it kind of makes sense, but doesn't. But it's like,
It's like you're
we know you're
forcing
trying
it.
to do something. Yeah,
You're forcing
it's
it.
not- it's kind of like
Yeah, it could work, but
recurring
it's like...
coffee. When I say it doesn't make sense, it does make sense. But I don't think a lot of people would have thought that. Like, why? Like,
Why
we make
would
more
you-
money when people just come in every day and we don't have to give them a subscription. But actually, I think it encourages, like you say, it's like it's a community you're building. It's not just money. You're now thinking, okay, you're now part of a club, and people love being part.
People love being
of a
part of
club,
something. Yeah,
you
as
know?
human beings, we love belonging.
Yeah.
We love feeling like we're part of something. And with Tressly, it's like you're really part of a community that supports you, that uplifts you, that you can learn from, and that's really never happened in the space, in the hair space before.
Yeah.
Let alone the black hair space. So it really is something that we've got feedback that's like invaluable.
Yeah. So with the investors you're speaking to, Are they like setting you targets? I know they haven't like committed, but are they setting you targets of like, yes, I want you to show that you're going to make £1 million in year one, you know, like Dragon Den's style, right?
Yeah.
2 million in year two, 5 million in year three. Are you having those kind of conversations with them?
Yeah, I think we're getting there because we're quite early in the process. But I think what they do want is a clear financial model.
Okay.
And also a clear like exit strategy. Like, what do you want to do? What, like, how do you want to run your business? And have you had those conversations with your co-founder? Like, do you want to exit in 5-6 years? Do you want to go? Do you want to do the VC round? Do you want to like IPO? What actually do you want? And you kind of have to build out your model based on that. And you need to have strong assumptions to back up every number in that model. I think that's one thing I've learned is you can't just say you're going to make, you can't just say you're going to make, you know, 100K, a mil this year. How are you going to do that? You know, what's your sales funnel? Like, how do you, I think you have to think very like granular and it's not thinking that I'm used to, I don't think that way. I think very much in like strategy, but actually, strategy then leads into building a funnel, which then leads into numbers and like how that all plays out. So I'm learning that. Yeah.
The question I want to know is, do you, in your mind, are you thinking that you want to exit, or do you feel like, nah, this is going to be a business I'll do for life? Or do you not know that yet?
I think we are thinking about it.
Okay.
I think we know how far we can take the business and want to take the business. And, you know, there'll probably be an exit at some point.
Okay.
But I you don't know, right? You have that. That's what you feel and you have a plan. But we'll see.
Okay. Cool. I love that. So obviously there's other stuff. You definitely know more about your space. I can tell that you know a lot about your space. I was doing a bit of research in terms of like other I don't know if you would classify them as competitors, but like Fresher, right?
Yes.
Are they like actual competitors?
Oh yeah, definitely.
Do they offer the full suite like you do, or is it just like one or two of what you have?
I would say they are competitors in that, you know, they might not offer the full suite, but they offer a major part of what we do.
Okay.
Right? So I would say any booking software is a competitor to us. So Fresher, Booksy, Schedulista, Acuity Scheduling, because really and truly, for a long time, that's all that's been around. The brand building element has never really been an additional component to these. So we are offering an additional component to that, but very much direct competitors. Okay.
How do you feel about that?
I think I feel fine because I think you have to kind of know your value, and you need to know where the value is that you bring. And so for us, we know that kind of brand is becoming increasingly important, super important, and two, community even more so. So how do we leverage those two things and grow a business that can basically create a niche? And I think that the trend with business is a niche within a niche, right? So even though we do cater and we will cater to all stylists, and we might even go into other areas of beauty, we know that starting in black hair is great because you can go deep and build real value for that community and then expand, right?
Yes.
So Amazon started off selling books, or Canva started off with yearbooks. Like you never really end up where you started. Yeah. But you just have to be very focused. Yeah. And you have to do that really well. Yeah. And then you have to grow. I call it grow your circle. Like keep expanding. Yeah. Outside of that.
I completely agree. The reason why Shoe Dog is one of my favorite books is because the way Nike started, they didn't start with selling their own trainers. Yeah. They started with selling Onosuku Tigers.
Yes.
That's how they started, reselling other people's trainers for years. Like I think 3, 4, maybe even up to 5 years they were selling other people's before they even built their own brand. Yeah. You know, and even at the beginning, it wasn't like, I want to start my own shoe company. It was like, I love trainers. I just want to resell Japanese into America because there's not many of their trainers here. So let me do that, right? So it's like evolution. I guess on the topic of evolution, what's kind of the vision in your mind of where you want like Tressly to be?
I think for us, you know, as I think I was mentioning earlier, the future of any industry is really important as a founder to know. So as you know, opportunities now are great, but where is your industry going? Because you need to also be going that direction. In fact, you need to get there before the industry gets there, right? And so for us, you know, we see areas such as like co-working for beauty growing massively in the hair
Okay,
space.
that's interesting.
Yeah.
For beauty.
Yeah, so for example, you have like WeWorks and stuff like that, which is
Yeah.
and you have various different types of co-working. So co-working for creatives, co-working for like all these different kind of niches. And I think one area that hasn't really been tapped into is beauty. And, I think since COVID, the rate at which salons have been shutting down is actually crazy. It's about 8% year on year.
Oh wow, okay.
But not only
crazy.
that, more and more stylists are going self-employed. The salon model is dying. So even if they're working in a salon, because it was never really a financially viable model. But now even more so, even if you work in a salon, you're probably renting a chair. So now there's this independent element to the salon experience where stylists are wanting their own space, like mini studios. And so in the last 3 years, I would say probably about 5 co-working spaces for beauty have popped up.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is amazing. And I think, and I saw this a few years ago and I said, I wonder how fast this is going to happen. And so even speaking to the stylists now, they're like, oh, do you know any good studios? You start off maybe in your home studio and you realize I'm growing quite fast. I need a space. But actually, I don't want to rent a chair. I need a little space that's mine, that my clients have a bit of privacy. Where can I get that, And so I think is it an area we'll go into? Maybe. I think it is something that we have on our kind of strategy.
Okay, so it's on the roadmap.
Yeah, but it's on the roadmap. I think we'll see how it progresses, but that's a key element, of that. I think the academy, our Tressly Academy, is a huge part of our roadmap as well, because education for stylists is so important.
Yeah.
And not just business, actually training. There are no real kind of afro hair training schools
That's
in the UK.
a very good point. I don't think any exist.
Yeah, and
when you actually think about it.
When you actually think about it, there's no formal education. The kind of MVQs have just started, allowing the cutting and styling of textured hair.
Okay.
And that doesn't,
Really?
Yeah. They've just added that to the professional standards.
This is crazy.
So it's
many gaps.
Yeah, so many gaps. So then it's you think about, that's just the cutting and styling. That's not the actual specialisms like wigs and weaves and braids. That's the bare minimum has just been added. How many more years is it going to take to, so I think there's definitely a space. And I think in the States, they've really been leading the charge on that. And how do we start to credit, certain styles that have just been left off the radar for so many years.
Wow.
And there's definitely space to do that in the UK as well. So our academy, right now it's obviously business focused upskilling, but it can definitely easily become something like that and become a bit of a stamp of approval, a bit of a certification for that quality of service.
Wow. Yeah, you done your homework. I already know, man. I mean, everybody knows. We all know. The audience knows, man. You've definitely done your homework. So I was thinking about the bigger picture, and you obviously spoke, about the future. But it also sounds like obviously Tressly is more than just a business for you. It's like a movement to empower diverse hair. Would you agree with that statement?
Yeah, 100%. Our vision is to economically empower independent hairstylists. And, that means so many things, because I think for us, it's through our community, because I think when you meet with like-minded people, you learn from them, you're empowered, you kind of lean on each other, kind of like a community of practice, which again is not really non-existent in the space. Economically empower, because obviously with our software, they're able to, create a brand for themselves, grow their businesses. There's features in there that allow them to retain clients, make more money. The academy is all about learning, it's all about upskilling. How do you be more efficient? How do you grow? So really it's we want them to make more money. We want them to grow. We want them to be better. And so that is our vision, essentially.
Amazing. I love that. So, okay, let's talk a little bit about the Gala. How was that for you? Obviously, you said it actually, a research happened in October, right?
Yes.
Looked brilliant. It looked amazing. It looked like obviously had a lot of fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you're able to talk me around, obviously, organizing the event, what went very well, what you felt like, look, I'm going to do better next time.
Yeah. The Gala was, the Gala's been like an idea that's been, I guess, on my heart for many, many years, because I felt like, you know, we did some videos interviewing stylists about how they felt about it. And I was watching it back actually the other day and I was like, this is so heartwarming because they were saying a lot of the things that I felt. They said as stylists, as hairstylists in the UK, they kind of feel a bit kind of like tossed to the side, not really recognized, and there was never really a space. So for example, you have like the British Hairdressing Awards. Afro hairstylists are not typically invited to stuff like that. You know? Yeah, I mean, they have one Afro hair category, but Afro hair has about 5 or 6 different specialisms. There's so many different levels. And so, you know, it is a lot more complex, but that recognition just wasn't there.
Yeah.
And, you know, I just felt like in an industry that's so big, that makes so much money, you know, some of these stylists are making 6 figures. How is no one being recognized or supported? And so the gala came about as a way to kind of celebrate, you know, like kind of like an ode to black hair in the UK, just to celebrate black hair and black hairstylists because they're the backbone of the culture. They create the trends,
100%.
you know, and so that was the idea. And so I spoke to a couple of brands that I felt would be aligned. So L'Oreal Pro sponsored the event.
What's
Alongside
L'Oreal Pro? I don't know what L'Oreal, the pro part of that
so
is.
L'Oreal, obviously everyone knows L'Oreal Paris. That's the consumer brand. They have a professional brand as well. So they actually create products specifically for hair professionals, so stylists. And these are kind of like, I guess, higher performing products for the salon or for hairstyling or hairstylists. So as a professional brand, it was very much aligned with them to support this because it was, you know, almost like 30 of the best hairstylists in the UK, best black hairstylists in the UK.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
In one room, like it kind of felt like we were aligned on that and they wanted to be a part of it, which was amazing.
That is so cool. So do you feel like, it sounds like the reception was amazing for it, and it sounds like it's like a no-brainer that you'll have to do this like every year at this point, right?
It is. Yeah. We also got Ruka Hair involved. So Ruka, amazing. Basically the first ever Afro hair extensions brand to be stocked in Selfridges. Absolutely incredible. They also sponsored the event. And then we had Hairdresser Journal, which is the trade publication for hairdressers in the UK, supporting the event. So it was kind of like some really heavy hitters for an event that's never happened before.
Yeah. How did you convince these people like,
you know what?
that you're going to actually... you know, deliver, because not everybody can do that. A lot of people could talk, but delivery is a lot of people can't do it.
Yeah, you kind of have to. I have a track record, right? And I think that helped with Hair Crush. I'd put on so many events. You know, some of the brand events I'd put on for brands like Dyson. You know, we'd had our own events at Hair Crush, and I was able to say, hey, we've done this before. Like, we know how to bring the best of the best together, and we know how to make it an incredible experience. So
I love that.
This is just another one of those things. Like, are you willing to come on board? And I remember, like, a shout out to the comms director at L'Oreal. When I had the meeting with her, Iona, she's so lovely. She came back to me the next day and she was like, it's a no-brainer. She was like, of course we want to support. Like, and it reaffirmed that like they felt like it was needed and this was the right time and I was the right person to do it.
Okay, that's amazing. So obviously you're going to be planning another one soon because it's already started 2024, right?
100%. It's going to be an annual event, and we hope that it does get better. It does get bigger. We got feedback from the last one. What went well, what we could do better, and it's gonna be here. It's not going anywhere.
Okay, wow. Looking forward to seeing more about it. So I've got a question, and this is something that I didn't even really realize myself. One of my posts of I had another guest, Jenny, where we were talking about neurodiversity, right? And it's not the first time I've seen a comment about this. It's like kind of shaming people wearing wigs and stuff like that. So I saw it, the first time I saw it was like maybe a year ago when I had somebody else, like a friend on before. And then I saw it come up again. And I'm like, what is going on? Like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? So there's obviously some people who are really strong advocates for, you know, your natural hair. And there's some people who are like, you know, they're quite both, right? Natural hair and, you know, wigs or anything else, right? So I guess where do you kind of stand on that kind of conversation, and can you give us a bit of an insight into that? Because it's not somewhere that I don't even know. I feel like it's a bit of an emerging area Or
It's
is
always
it
been
emerging
there.
discussion? It's obviously always been there. Yeah.
It's always been there. And I feel quite strongly about this because actually when I set up Hair Crush, this was one of the founding like principles was that what we wanted to promote is we didn't want to be a natural hair platform or a natural hair movement. We wanted to promote healthy hair choices. And that was actually our slogan, Happy Healthy Hair, because it was all about empowering women, however they wanted to wear their hair, to help them to make sure that it was healthy, right? So in our newsletter, we had stuff about wigs, we had stuff about braids, we had stuff about leave out, permed relaxed hair, locks. Like there was no discrimination about how you decided to wear your hair because at the end of the day, like Black women are so blessed and lucky that we're able to change our hair quite a lot. And I think that's something that should be celebrated. Like if someone chooses to wear their hair natural all the time, that's fine. If someone wants to wear braids all the time, that's also fine. And if someone wants to flip in between the two, you know, like when I go into work and they're like, oh, new hairstyle today. I'm like, I like change. Like I'm into hair.
Yeah.
So you won't see me in the same hairstyle. Like, you know, look, give me 2 months, I probably would have changed my hair 3 times. You know, I'll have it out natural. I'll have it down here and then I might have braids next week. Like it's just who I am, right? And so I'm very much like women should have the choice to do whatever they want, but also have the tools that they need to be able to like do it safely, right? Because I'm not an advocate for, you know, things that damage your hair or techniques that are like not great for you. Like if you want to do it, but just do it in a way. If you want to color your hair, color it, but make sure you're using the right type of dye for textured hair. Like just have the information, right?
I agree.
So that's kind of where I stand.
Okay, cool. Yeah, because like honestly, some people feel really strongly about it, and you know, I feel like at the end of the day, right, it's almost no different to if I wanted to dye my hair white. People be like, oh no, you should be natural, you shouldn't dye your hair. Well, like, no, I want to. It's fun, right? I want to try new styles. So I don't know why people get so controlling about other people's lives and what they should do. If you want to natural hair, you want to be natural, that's fine. But I think if somebody else is not doing it, that doesn't take away from them not wanting to be themselves. You know, it's a bit, people get too serious with these things sometimes.
People get serious. And I think I always try and think about the other perspective, right? And I think people have this idea that if you don't wear your hair, or you know you don't feel comfortable wearing your hair in its natural state, that's a problem. And I do think to some extent, like I will agree with that, because I think you have to see yourself in your natural state as beautiful, and that's the starting point, you know. And if you don't, and you're using these styles to maybe like detract or distract you, or, you know, take away from, you know, your original state, and you kind of feel like, okay, cool, I look better this way, or then it's like people feel like you shouldn't feel like that. But there's a whole load of reasons why, you know, like assimilation, feeling like you need to kind of conform. Like there's so many reasons why women do things. There's so many reasons why men do things. Like there's so many. So I think it's very difficult to draw a line in the sand and say, you do this because this, you know? Everyone has different reasons. I think you're right. We shouldn't shame anyone or make anyone feel a certain way. But I think it seems to be in this debate. I've had this debate with a lot of people, and I think they have an issue where as a woman, as a Black woman, when you are in your natural state, you don't think you're beautiful, they feel like that's a problem. So I get that perspective. I get that
perspective,
you know?
I understand that.
And I think that that's a fair argument. I think people are on different points in that journey of accepting themselves in the natural state. And some people are happy with themselves in the natural state, just want to change it up sometimes. So you gotta accept
me
it.
Having the hair now, and I want to go bald.
You want to like, you know. So I think
not going bald in time, but still, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely hear it. You know what it got me thinking about, right? When we were talking about like, you know, hairstyles. I think something came out recently. You know, the relaxing box. I can't remember their brand name. That was false, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That it came out that was
Soft
false.
Sheen
That's
and
so
Carson.
messed up.
Yeah, is it Soft Sheen and Carson? I can't remember.
Is that really popular brand?
Dark and Lovely.
And it was marketed to Black people to for them to straighten their hair, but it wasn't like, I can't. It did. The people in the picture didn't use the product, right?
Yes.
That is so
crazy.
messed up.
And there's so much stuff stuff around relaxers
Yeah.
as well. Like, you know, people, like, you know, there's been studies saying that they're
Yeah.
linked to cancer. You know, I think there's been
And
a
it damages
lack of
your hair as well,
100%.
badly.
I think there's been a lack of care for many years around black hair products. I think the people that were creating them didn't think about the consumers, they didn't care about the consumers. And that's why I really love this wave of like black owned brands in the market, because you have women that are creating products, you know, like you have like, you know, brands like Ruka, like they are thinking about the supply chain. How is it done ethically? Like all these things that like really matter to them, because they know that it matters to the consumer, because they are the consumer themselves.
They are the consumer. I feel like you definitely will have a place and a say in a lot of this stuff, because as you have the hairstylists who know the clients, and you've been a hairstylist yourself, you can have a lot of brands that would come to you again that would want to, you know, penetrate the market in terms of like the products that are being used and almost like get your advice as to, you know, what you're doing in space and how could you, of course, like, you know, show a bit of care when you're bringing these products, and like you say, ethically as well. Very, very important. It's that relaxing situation was mad.
Crazy.
They should have got more stick for that, and they should have been getting sued
100%,
by a lot of people. I'm surprised
yeah.
that it wasn't like a class action suit against them.
Yeah. And I think it might have been in the US, but very, very poor.
Yeah.
And I think even on that point of like, you know, supporting brands, I think with us, with Tressly, I feel like there's a real gap as well for data. I think there's never really been a strong data source on the black hairstyling industry. Like there's no aggregation of what it looks like, what the trends are. And so, you know, insight reports and things like that will be really important. You know, so we'll definitely be tapping
That's
into
amazing. See the tech side. This
Tech,
how I know
data,
you're on the tech.
all of it.
And that's what they say. Data is going to be the new oil. So,
yes. 100%. Yeah.
So I want to talk about, you know, being an entrepreneur, right? You know, so obviously you've got a co-founder. So Sam's your co-founder, and you often hear stories like the Lean Startup. I don't know if you've read it, but the beginning of it,
I feel like everyone has to read that. But it's a rite of passage. You kind of have to.
Well, how he starts the book, I'm not going to spoil the whole book, but how he starts it is like him talking about, you know, it not going well with his co-founder. And then there's lots of other examples where, you know, co-founding like works very, 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 very well. I guess, how have you, you know, found that? And I guess what are like the pros and cons of starting a business with someone? Yeah,
that's a great question. And I don't think I've ever been asked that question, but I think it's an amazing question, because I've actually had a business without a co-founder and now I have one with a co-founder. So I know the difference. I think when it's you and just you, I think it's great because you have a vision, you're just getting on with it and it is what it is, right? But the only problem is that you don't have someone to bounce ideas off. You don't have someone to tell you that idea is pants. Like, no, we're not doing that. And then you kind of like, you kind of move a bit blindly, right? Like I felt like anyway, not completely, because we did amazing things, but there is something about having someone else that has maybe a different area of specialism than you coming in and I think I would have done things probably a lot quicker. So that's one thing. I think the other thing is when you do have a co-founder, the only way it can work is before you start the business together, you have a sense of where you want to go and where you want to not go. Because I think if you don't have a sense of like, okay, do we want to grow this business for how many years, blah, 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 or do you want to exit the business at this point because it no longer serves you? You know, the things that you might not know the answers to yet, but just at least ask those questions. Do we want to sell the business in X amount of years? Like, agree on those things at the start. I know it seems like the idea is exciting, like, oh, do you want to build it with me? Let's go, let's start building. Like, what's the end goal? What's the vision?
It's true.
You know, and are you aligned on it? You know, because you especially if you have the idea, you might have an idea of where you want to go, but the other person maybe has a completely different idea. And then it's like it gets to that point and then you fall out. What happens to the business?
That's true.
What happens to the business?
It either stops or you just do it by yourself, right? Which becomes really tough, right?
Exactly.
But a lot of people just be like, it's done.
Yeah, and the fallout from that is crazy.
It could be tough.
It's tough.
Yeah, it could be tough. Obviously, God willing, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Good.
I guess, as a young entrepreneur, do you feel like there's a bit of a pressure to succeed you know, quickly, especially in this age of social media where where people are seemingly, you know, overnight becoming a success, which, you know, they're not really, it's not overnight, but
Exactly.
yeah, do you feel like there's a bit of a pressure on you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think yes and no. Yes, in some regard, because I think, you know, whenever you see something, you think, oh, wow, this is incredible. Like, how do they get here so quickly? Blah, blah, blah. But what I always now try to remember, and I said yes and no, the no part is that I always try and see, like, when did this person start? What have they been doing? Because typically you'll find that it's actually not been fast. It might appear to be fast, or they might, you know, they might put it out as that way, but when you actually see, you probably see this person's been working on it for this long, or blah, 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 blah. So just really trying to realize that my journey is my journey, and I can't follow anyone else's path, right? This is just mine, basically.
Yeah. I guess, how do you stay focused? Because there's so much distractions.
Oh,
You know, like Cat Williams' interview, that was a distraction.
honestly,
That was a distraction. That's not only one. Football, Arsenal's a distraction. Everything is a distraction. I realized one day, right, when I was working on the podcast, I kept on looking at my phone. I was like, this is distracting.
Yeah.
I could get this stuff done quicker if I stopped. Like, every notification, even as I'm looking through the questions, I'm getting notifications of stuff.
Yeah.
It's like, it's tough out here.
It's really tough. I think a few things have helped me. One, I've actually turned off my notifications on my phone.
Okay.
So I never get anything popping up. I also have like times for apps. So like I have daily limits for some of my apps, like Instagram, 30 minutes. I think it's even 15. I think I changed it. Yeah, I think I changed it to 15. Like, of course, that excludes, like, when I have work to do on Instagram, like posting or like content scheduling, that's different. But on a social level, I have like different, like, so it will be like, yeah,
Amazing.
Your limit is done for the day. I'm like, okay, that's fine. Can't go on it anymore.
Wow.
So I think you know, Atomic Habits is a great book. I think it's taught me that, like, you have to put systems in place if you want things to change in your life. And I think when I realize, like, what's distracting me, it's seeing something, tapping into it, going and then getting distracted by something in that. So remove notifications, one. Going on something for one thing, like for example, Instagram, and then spending like half an hour on there. Okay, cool. Let's put a system in place for that. So it's just trying to put systems in place to like help me not get distracted. And I will probably fall short sometimes, but the system is there to at least support me as best possible.
Yeah.
And that's all I can do, right? I think, it's been difficult, but I think, you have to put systems in place to help.
Yeah. So they say today, the modern time, is the best time to start a business. It's the easiest time to start a business. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
Why?
I think previously there's been so many barriers to starting a business. I think information wise, there wasn't like the ease of getting the information of like, how do I do this? It was a lot harder 7-8 years ago to be like, okay, this is the roadmap. There is so much information out there right now, how to start a business, how to grow a business, how to scale it, how to sell a business. Like, there's just so much. And I think, yes, it can be overwhelming, but if you're able to fish through, you can figure it out, you know? Whereas before, it would have been a lot harder. You probably needed someone that was in business or maybe that was in your industry and maybe like try and get them to mentor you. You know, there were so many barriers. Even things like creating a personal brand online. Yeah. Like, it was so much harder. Like, you would have to kind of like maybe go on TV or go on a radio station.
That's true.
Now you can build people building like, you know, multi-figure personal brands on Instagram and TikTok just from their bedrooms, right? So I think the barriers are definitely lower. But that means more competition, you know? So you do have to create something that's worthwhile having. But it's easier to create. It's the trade-off.
Amazing. I guess if you were to like, you know, start Tressly again, what would you do differently?
I would move faster.
Okay. Really? So what, you'd quit your job faster? Everything?
Not necessarily quit my job. I think there are, from inception to where we are today, it's been about 4 years.
Ah, really?
I think when I had the idea, when I was in the thick of Hair Crush, I felt like we were like, things were going really well with Hair Crush, and I didn't want to like stop that, even though I felt like, you know, Tressly is where I want to be, like, you know. So it took me a while to kind of wind down what I was doing. And I wish I'd just known that, like, hey, this is where you need to be. This is where you need to be. Wrap this up, and start heading in this direction, right? And I don't regret it. I think I would just do it differently, because as much as I enjoyed another 2 years of like campaigns and events, and it was very draining, right? And there was a lot of activity. But I think if I started Tressly earlier, I would be in a different place now with it. And it would have, again, been before COVID, so I would have gotten a head start.
Okay.
All these little things. But I always think things happen for a reason. So I say that, but I'm also like, hey, you know, we're going to be successful regardless.
Yes, exactly. Yes, exactly. Yeah, you're right place, right time. Antoinette, it's been great having this conversation with you. Like, I've learned so much. It's been such an insightful conversation. I don't know that much about the hair industry, and I feel like I've learned a lot about it from you, and you're super knowledgeable about it. You're super passionate about it, and it's amazing the things that you're doing. It's amazing the vision that you have as well. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing what you achieve with it. I guess, what do you have planned next for yourself, aside from obviously you telling us that you're quitting in a month or so? Yeah.
For me, I think I really want to have a great year. I think it's going to be a hard year because, like, penetrating an industry is never easy. I think I have an added advantage of knowing the industry I'm going to penetrate and being in that industry already for many years. But I think, you know, it's never easy to take a product to market. So all the things I've done previously for other brands, I need to do it for myself now, you know? So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to an exciting, challenging year.
Yeah. And if people want to obviously, you know, follow you, follow your journey, follow Tressly, I guess, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the best place is Instagram. So Tressly, we are at tress.ly, so TRESS.LY. And then I'm on Antoinette Ale _, so Antoinette Ale _.
Okay, amazing. Yeah, like I said, this has been a great conversation, and I definitely want to have a follow-up episode. Maybe Sam can come as well, and we can talk about, like, you know, once you've launched, like, what you've learned, like, in your first year, or the challenges. You know, no, it's always good because you know, I've had a few a few other guests that have repeated, and just seeing, like, what challenges they're navigating, how business is going and stuff like that. But yeah, it looks like you're launching at the right time, and it sounds like you got, like, a lot of exciting things ahead for 2024. Do you have any final words for the audience?
No final words. Just, I think, when starting a business, start small. That's just my one piece of advice. Like, you have the big idea, start with the smallest thing you could possibly do, the smallest version of the product that it could be, and test it, and then go from there.
Yeah.
That's a big lesson.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Antoinette. Thank you so much, watchers and listeners, for tuning into this episode of podcast. We'll see you next week's episode.